One of the guys who absolutely know a lot about that is Ben Richards. So now we're going to go from a Danish dialect to a German dialect to a Danish dialect to a UK dialect. So Ben Richards from Bradley and Yelda. Give him a big round of applause. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for having me this morning. My name's Ben. I'm Consulting Director at Radley Yelda. We're a UK-based branding and communications agency. And I've been invited here to give you a little bit of insight into who is fit enough to put purpose into practice. So I'm going to be talking today about our global study of the world's most purposeful brands and sharing a bit of insight with you all from our research. So to start with, I thought it would be quite useful to consider just for a moment what we mean when we talk about purpose. So we're very firmly in the business of activating purpose at Radley Yelda, both defining and finding purpose. But we're not the only ones talking about purpose at the moment. And I suppose our interest in purpose came from three main starting points. So really our interest in purpose came about because we'd noticed the world change. And three main drivers initially got myself and my background in sustainability primarily to sit down with our brand team at RY and explore some of these changes 2 years ago now. So the changes that we'd noticed were that technology is transforming how businesses and brands have to work. You're always on, you're always expected to provide content, there are more and more channels to fill, and in this sort of proliferation of content, it's much, much harder to be heard and much, much harder to make your point. Coupled with that, your audiences have got more savvy, so every 21-year-old with an iPhone is now a brand manager. They know which angle to take a selfie from, they're building profiles of themselves, so these more savvy stakeholders are making it much, much harder for us as a community of brand practitioners to get our content out there. And finally, sustainability has moved very much to the mainstream of corporate discourse. So with these three factors, plus a few more that have come in since then, changing business leader attitudes, a greater demand for transparency, new partnership models, great to hear about that a moment ago, and this post-truth world we seem to be working in, corporates have got a much, much bigger challenge managing their brands than they have done before. And our very firm belief is that purpose is really a response to all of these challenges. So purpose is a way of making sense of this much more difficult operating context and really answering the big questions about why we exist as a business. So our view on purpose, and purpose from our point of view does do that job of explaining why you exist as an organization. We think that brands with purpose use their unique position, experience, and capabilities to deliver things that matter to individuals, society, and the planet. So that's the definition of purpose that we use. But this is the really important bit, and if you take nothing else away from my presentation today, remember this slide. Because being purposeful is about so much more than having nice words on your website, a nice set of phrases. It's absolutely about getting your business on board to make a bigger difference. And that's really our key message from Radley Yelda. So building a brand, as we know, is the process of many, 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 many small actions. And never is that truer if you're trying to build a brand that is purposeful. So that's our point of view. In terms of where we think activation happens, I've talked a little bit already about the different types of purpose. So this is how you define your purpose as an organization, but then the crucial bit, as I've said, really happens over here. So what happens when you start to share that purpose across your channels and in your annual report, on your social media? How does that tie through to your performance as an organization? Do you have the right KPIs in place? How does it link to behaviors? And that really is what this little book sets out to answer. We developed a set of 27 criteria that relate to those 4 areas. And we share the findings from our research in our annual Fit for Purpose study. So So really, this is what I've been invited here to talk about today. Who is fittest for purpose? So using those 27 criteria, we look at 180 brands. From those 180 brands, we celebrate the top 100 in this little publication. The quick answer, they're the fittest. So congratulations if you see your logo up there. There are some of you in the room today. This is a snapshot of the companies from around the world who we recognize as being particularly good, both at that purpose and storytelling piece, and at activating purpose too. Unilever, I'm afraid, comes in at number 1. No surprises there for anybody working in this space. Their purpose is to make sustainable living commonplace. But I think, crucially, the thing that Unilever, and indeed most of our leaders in the index do, is really score consistently well across all 4 of these areas. So it's not just about having that really, really well-defined purpose that sits nicely in front of everything, but it is about pulling it through everything else that you are doing. What I'm going to do for the rest of the presentation, though, is share a few stats and then some other best practices about where organizations are doing a really great job at some of the specifics, because as I say, building that purposeful brand is really in the detail. So in this year's study, we found that 86% of companies that we looked at had some form of purpose. So in terms of purpose definition, organizations are getting much, much better at saying, this is what we're about, this is what we believe in, this is what we are here to do. So that's great. It gets a bit more challenging when it comes to that activation point. So of those 180 brands that we looked at, 86 had a clearly defined purpose. Only 36% of that sample were then fit enough to put that into practice. Furthermore, when it comes to some of the more detailed areas, some quite obvious things lots of companies just aren't doing. So only a quarter of our sample had any kind of target that spoke to their purpose. So measurement, not really happening. Really disappointingly, 30% of leaders were talking about purpose. So one of the things that we look at when we do the research is what your CEO is saying. Is he or she out there talking about purpose in speeches, on platforms, on social media, in your annual report? Usually it's not the case, which is really disappointing. Again, less than a third have got any kind of governance structure around purpose. So if you're really serious about making sustainable living commonplace, in the case of Unilever, are you moving the pieces around within your organization in order to get that governance in the right order, to give you the best chances of success? Most organizations aren't. And only half are connecting purpose with business strategy. So there's a lot of work to do there. Ooh. One of the good points, around 70% of organizations that we looked at are starting to invest in those more innovative type of partnerships. So I think that recognition that you can't go it alone when it comes to purpose is increasingly coming home to land. That's really, really great. So particularly in the top 20, those kind of smart partnerships are starting to come through. And from a purpose perspective, that's exactly what we're looking for. So then we're going to have a quick look at some of the world's leading practitioners when it comes to this stuff. So taking those 4 areas of focus, so purpose and story, communications, performance, and behavior, we're just going to look at a couple of examples of best practice in each of those that we identified from the research. I'm not going to go into these in detail, but I think the slides are available afterwards, so do take a look if you are interested. So when we look for a compelling purpose and story, the kind of things that we look for are clarity, authenticity, something that is differentiated. Crucially, it has to be forward-looking, and we also give it a slightly subjective score for how inspirational we find it. It's the most difficult one of our criteria to mark, but that's what we're looking for when it comes to purpose and story. Crucially, the ingredients we're looking at here are what an organization is good at, what the organization's passion is, so nice to see passion coming up again this morning, and then what does the world need? So that intersection of those things, in terms of the content of a purpose, is really what we're looking for to make something really, really compelling. So just a couple of examples on this one. One of the examples that we really like is SAP, the tech and software company. So SAP really get those elements of purpose down really well. They're acknowledging what they're good at. They're here to make the world run better. They acknowledge what they're passionate about, improving people's lives. And through their storytelling, so they break down their purpose in terms of these causes, they're really reflecting what the world needs. So the purpose and story score goes beyond just those words themselves and works out how you're telling that story consistently and compellingly. Next up, Philips. Now, admittedly, this was taken before Philips split into two businesses, but their purpose is one of my favorites. So Philips are here to strive to make the world healthier and more sustainable through innovation. So having that innovation right at the heart of everything that they do, we think is great. Talks to that human need, talks to that forward-looking need as well. And the brilliant thing here is how that breaks down across their various businesses. So tying it back to that core stuff that you're actually doing every day has to be part of activating purpose from where we're sat. Moving on, we're going to think a little bit about the communications. I've only included one organization here, and that organization is GE. GE, for me, are head and shoulders a leader when it comes to talking about their purpose absolutely everywhere. And I think the consistency, the courage, the conviction is something that really makes you believe that GE are doing this well and doing this properly. Their purpose might be a little bit American for some tastes, I guess. They're here to invent the next industrial era, to build, move, power, and cure the world, which is quite bold, quite visionary, quite forward-looking, definitely purposeful. One of the other tests that we use for purpose is it the kind of thing that would get me out of bed in the morning? And I think I would go and work for a company that wanted to do that, which is good. So the storytelling is simple, human, aware, and this happens absolutely everywhere. So there are a couple of videos embedded in the presentation, which I don't think we've got time for today, but worth a look afterwards. So their moving image output is prolific. All of it goes back to that cause around reinventing the next industrial era, which is brilliant. So they take something which is considered impossible and show how it is possible. So their Unimpossible Missions movie is definitely worth a watch. The communications aren't just GE's, crucially, so they're crowdsourcing, working with partners through their communications, which is another really crucial element for both engagement and credibility, helping them to get to new audiences, helping them to reach more people with that really evangelical purpose around inventing the next industrial era. Crucially, their people feature in the storytelling, so this is really human storytelling. So they're sharing the stories of where that purpose is put into practice. And not only are they taking current employees into account, but their careers site as well is absolutely superb. Again, wonderful series of really funny films about how people misperceive GE and what they do, and how they're not that company that people think they are, but they are a really pioneering tech company that is striving to make business better and make the world better in the process. So Sarah's story is particularly good, and I can recommend that for after the session today. So the story's all well and good. The communication's fine. The next two criteria is where it gets a little bit harder to score the top marks in our survey. So this is when we start to think about the connection between purpose and your performance. So is your purpose connected to your business model? And in the UK, certainly it's a requirement that you have to talk about your business model through your legal reporting. So that's something that we look for and encourage. Is it linked to your business strategy? Does it connect to your sustainability strategy? Most organizations do, but not everyone. Have you got KPIs on this? And do you have targets in place as well? One of the examples that we really like here is Honda. So they do a really, really great job at linking what they call the Honda philosophy, which is a kind of combined purpose, which links a little bit to this point that they're striving to be a company that society wants to exist. But that linkage is really, really clear and explicit with Honda. Philips, again, doing an absolutely cracking job at connecting purpose with KPIs. I suppose it's maybe a little bit overreaching, but they claim to have touched 2 billion lives with their products and helped 2 billion lives get healthier through that innovation, which they present right next to the financials. So bringing together that non-financial data and the financial data to show how your purpose is really making a difference is great practice. This is maybe my favorite example from a performance perspective. So this is Pearson. Pearson are a company that makes educational textbooks. Their purpose is all about learning. They are always learning, and that's their purpose as a business. So what they've done is said, we actually don't know whether our products work or not. We can sell these textbooks, we know how many kids pass exams, but really, what difference does that make to the lives of those people that we've touched? So what Pearson have done is really bravely, actually, committed to a 5-year study to find out, 5 years after you've had that learning, how much difference has that made to somebody's life? They don't know at the moment whether their products work, really. They don't know whether really people have changed and got more out of that English as a foreign language course or that educational textbook that they've sold. So they've committed to finding that out. And I think this kind of measurement when it comes to purpose and performance is really interesting if you have the time and the budget to do it. And then the final area then is just around behaviors. So this area arguably is the most crucial. I think we've touched already on leadership a little bit this morning, and the leadership piece is coming in quite strongly in just a moment. So I think first of all, it's vital to share the stories of how your people can give your purpose meaning. So this is from Microsoft. They've got stories here from all over the world about the great work that they're doing related to their purpose, which is enabling people and businesses throughout the world to realize their full potential. Another really quick win is making that really explicit connection between purpose and values. Often, purpose and values will have come about at a similar point in a journey's life cycle. The reason for being, the kind of why, and the how tend to evolve together. So here we've got Hitachi, who do a really wonderful job at linking their 3 values, harmony, sincerity, and pioneering spirit, to that purpose. They do it through a triangle, which is maybe presentation-wise a little bit old hat, but that link is clear and explicit, which is great. And then finally, this point around leadership again. This is a company called Novo Nordisk. They are another Danish company. The Danes clearly know what they're doing when it comes to purpose. But they're there to driving change to defeat diabetes. So they're a diabetes medicine company that want to defeat diabetes. So in fulfilling their purpose, they'll put themselves out of business, which is quite bold. The really bold thing is that their CEO, or their former CEO, went on the record and said this. He said, we're very comfortable about this. We've changed our governance structures to do this. We've developed the Novo Nordisk way in order to make this happen. So all of that change has happened within the company to make their purpose real and true and experienced every single day through the decisions that the people in the business make. Partly as a result of that, their former CEO, Lars Sørensen, was named the Harvard Business Review's CEO of the Year a couple of years ago. So this kind of stuff is really where activating purpose is difficult but most valuable. Finally and quickly, I'm going to encourage you to mind the gap. So one of the things, as I've mentioned, we look at the words, and it's all very well and quite easy to have nice words. Doing that bit over there, when you take it into action, is much harder. But making sure that there is as small a gap as possible between what you're saying and what you're doing is absolutely vital in order to be authentic and credible when you're talking about purpose. Just having the nice words without following through with the actions is pointless. So please don't do it. So what we do, we track all of the word scores, which is in blue, versus the action scores, which is in black. You can see for some organizations here, there's quite a large word action gap. The largest in our sample belongs to Walmart. So they score 80% with our criteria for that purpose score. Walmart helps people around the world save money and live better anytime and anywhere, but that just does not come through in their communications, their performance, and their behavior. So that gives them a word action gap of 40%. So a massive gulf between what they're saying and any evidence that they're giving that their purpose is really being lived. Coming at it the other way, you've got someone like Nestle, who are doing a great job on communications, a great job on performance, a great job on behavior, but that purpose is maybe we felt just a little bit stiff and a little bit boring. So they're actually not claiming enough with their purpose. So here we've got all of the action is in place, but the purpose and story score is lagging behind. IKEA have got a word action gap score of 0. So this is really, I think, the holy grail for purpose practitioners. They've got a fairly understated purpose to create a better everyday life for the many people. But from a communications, performance and behavior scores, they are absolutely walking the talk, which is crucial. I don't have very long left, so all I'm going to remind you of is that purpose is a business issue. It can help you set direction, strengthen culture, join the dots, drive growth, build loyalty, and increase resilience. We do have statistics to back most of this up, but this isn't the time or place for those, I don't think. So finally, what are you waiting for? I think purpose is having a moment at the moment because the world needs it. The world needs strong brands, and the world needs businesses to step up and lead. So from our point of view, go forth, be purposeful, download a copy of Fit for Purpose, and thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much. I don't think there's any doubt about what gets you up in the morning. So if you could maybe share just some input to the audience, I will sentence to kind of narrow that gap between action and saying what would that one thing be?
I think for me it's all about leadership. I think you're not going to get anywhere unless you have the most senior decision makers in the business on board with what you're doing. I know sustainability practitioners have been saying this for a really long time. I think brand practitioners too need that leader to really embody and embrace purpose. And from my point of view, without that, you're in trouble. So yeah, go and speak to your CEO, everyone, immediately.
Cool. Thank you so much, Ben. Give Ben a big round of applause. Thank you so much.